Hello, everyone. Dave Cole here with EMX Royalty Corporation. We're the royalty generator. We generate royalties utilizing the prospect generation business model, as you've heard me discuss previously. That's our passion. But recently, we've become a good acquirer of royalties as well, pouring fuel on the fire. And happy to be here with you today, Matt.
David, welcome back. And I just need to say this. At last, you've spent that money that was burning a hole in your pocket. The amount of times we've had questions going, what's he going to do with that cash? When's it going to happen? And I think I must have asked you every time I've spoken to you. So well done. Well done.
Thank you.
Why SS?
Pop the champagne bottles after it closes.
Well, yeah, we've got another, month or so?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Let's talk about it. In fact, that's all I want to talk about today, actually, because I think it's a really good deal for you guys. But I want to understand some of the moving parts, if I may. So, how long has that conversation been going on?
Yeah, it's been going on quite some time. And Scotiabank was the broker representing SSR. We actually contacted SSR because we have continued discussion with them inside Turkey, outside Turkey, showing them our generative product. And I've got good relationships with their vice president of exploration, who's a Turkish gentleman I've worked with for a very, very long time. And we suggested to them, you guys should sell your royalties. You should sell them to us. And they said, that's a great idea. We'd love to. However, we need to run through a process to make sure we get a fair price for them. And they did. They had Scotiabank do that. We have a good relationship with Scotiabank. And I will say there's a pleasure to work with Scotiabank and a pleasure to work with SSR. And we're delighted to have them as an incipient 12% shareholder in EMX.
Okay, yeah. Their headline is very different from your headline. They're talking about this $100 million deal. So for their shareholders, it sounds fantastic. You were a little bit more demure. So why don't you tell people about the deal terms, and then maybe we can get into the why if it's structured like that.
So both press releases are factually accurate. It is a $100 million deal. We went into greater detail explaining how that $100 million come to fruition. It's $33 million in cash USD from EMX to SSR at close, in addition to $33 million USD in shares, which will be 11 or 12% pro rata depending upon our share price during the VWAP period, which is forthcoming. Then in addition, there's a $34 million sequence of payments that are made as the Yeni Pazar project is fully de-risked.
Okay, so you're all out of cash now, aren't you?
That will take us right down to, close to zero, which is why we put in place the $10 million facility from Sprott. And Sprott's been a long-term, this is Sprott Global. Sprott Global's been a long-term capital partner of ours, very supportive. They lent us money when we needed a little bit of cash before we closed the Russia deal, as an example, to get that one across the finish line at very favorable terms. They've done that here again. We find them to be supportive capital partners.
Yeah, let's talk about the construct of this, because you've got some development assets, you've got some resource stage assets, you've got some exploration stage assets in that portfolio. The development stage assets all sit within a private company. Now, when we've talked to royalty companies in the past, some of them have suffered where the counterparty is, the assets sitting within a private company because there's no market face to it. You don't know what's going on, and very little information is forthcoming. And you have got to be quite careful about what you say too. So, are you cautious? Are you nervous at all about how you deal with that?
So, you're hitting the nail on the head, and congratulations to you to figure that out, and a good way to make me squirm. So, this is one of the Achilles heels of EMX's whole portfolio, because we have a major asset that's being backed by Xinjiang Mining, Chinese company. They have a website. They announce reserves and resources on their website, but they do not meet 43101 standards. Therefore, I'm not allowed to talk about them. And the same thing with Balya, which is a private company, which is advancing the very large lead zinc silver deposit with a 5,000 ton per day mill. Private company in Turkey, they don't have to meet 43101 standards. Therefore, I'm not allowed to talk about the resource. So we're deeply familiar with this. And this is one of the key aspects why EMX, in my opinion, remains undervalued. And that will be unlocked when we show the cash flow from these things. And, because we can talk about the checks we get, and we will get them. And that, so it's at that point in time. But you're 100% correct. This is not a public company operating a gold mine in a Western country that meets U.S. and Canadian law with respect to their disclosure. And we can give accurate forecasts with respect to production profiles from a bankable feasibility study. I will say that the Gediktepe mine, of which we're obtaining a 10% royalty on the oxide cap and a 2% royalty in perpetuity on the sulfide zone, that does have a 43-101 document filed by a previous operator, a predecessor company to SSR Mining. And your listeners and people interested in EMX can, on their own, research that document.
Okay, next thing I want to talk to you about that with about Gediktepe, because 10% NSR. I appreciate it's at the oxide. Presumably that means obviously near surface, so that's the stuff they're going after first, right? But 10%, sometimes that puts companies off from going after that. They may want to have a conversation with you, because that could be all of their profit.
So SSR, it was a predecessor company to SSR that actually designed this. And that was a key component to the price when they sold their interest in that operation to Lydia, who was the operator there. And the reason why they weighted heavily the near-term production from the oxide cap, because it's a very enriched gold silver zone that has very high profit margin within that oxide cap. So that's where they could afford to pay a large royalty. And then when you get into the sulfide, which has a higher cost of production, it's more complicated, the royalty goes to 2%. So it was actually designed carefully and astutely so that the seller could get what they were looking for without encumbering the economics of the mine.
So what's the ratio between the oxide and the sulfides then in terms of dollar value?
So the oxide, yeah. So the oxide's the first 3 years of production, and I can't say what the exact number that we anticipate from that, but it's double-digit millions of dollars per year coming to EMX right away.
Okay, so three years on the oxide. What's the life of mine on the rest of it?
So you have to check the 43-101 document filed by the predecessor company. But it should be nice long lift mine.
Okay, and same with Yeni Pazar as well. You're sitting between a 6 and a 10% NPI on that. So again, is that it's been constructed as part of the same deal or separate deal?
Absolutely part of the same portfolio.
Okay, got it.
Being sold by SSR, but because it is an NPI, which is net profit interest royalty, and we all know that net profits interest royalties are subject to greater dispute and subject to greater variables that can be worked. And so if the mine's not profitable, if they have a bad year or metal prices go down or whatnot, then you're not going to get paid. Therefore, there's much greater risk in an NPI than there is in an NSR. And that is why the payment structure for that royalty, which actually we anticipate it's going to pay very, very, very nicely, because we do expect it to be a very profitable operation. But the payment structure for that is requiring that the project is completely de-risked before we pay. So at construction, $2 million in EMX stock gets paid to SSR. At production, another $2 million in stock is paid to SSR. After the royalties paid $10 million US, then we pay SSR another $15 million. And after it's paid another $10 million, $20 million total, then we pay the balance of the $34 million, which is 15 more. So the most that we would ever be out of pocket as that de-risking occurs and it proves that this is a cash flowing, profitable operation, will be $14 million is actually the maximum that we would have out, even though the headline number is 34.
Right. Okay. See, that's interesting, because you got two lots of contracts in a way here, because you've got private company whose information you need to rely on. I'm sure they're audited and all of that kind of good stuff. But with an NPI, the company determines what profitable means, right? There's a little bit of that. There's a little bit of wiggle room for them. Right. And then there's the...
I don't want to say that specifically about this counterparty. We think this counterparty is a very reputable group.
Sure.
But just broadly looking at NPIs across the whole industry, they are subject to greater dispute than NSRs. Just put it that way.
I know you put it politely, but I'm saying it more overtly, which is sure. there's a kind of trust required, but and I know private companies have a little bit more wiggle room on what costs get attributed where, and how do you monitor that? What can you put into place? I get the bit at the back end where you're saying, well, look, we don't have to pay too much money out until we've had money in. That's great. but also at the front end, you've also got, every dollar counts. You've got to put processes in place. How do you do that?
Oh my goodness me! So we've got a team of folks that humble me with respect to their deep knowledge of engineering, mining, finance, and metallurgy, and Turkey specifically, as well as elsewhere in the world, that hyper-analyze this stuff, and at the end of the day, it is a fully risk-weighted net present value calculation that drives our decision making. As you've heard me say many times, astute allocation of capital is our paramount value.
Okay, how advanced are these? Because you've got four projects. Because we've also got the Abra Silver. They've been on the show. Good bunch of guys. Good project, Diablos. What's the timing on these? What's your expectation of when revenue starts to flow?
I believe Gediktepe will be in production in a month.
Okay.
And that's the front-loaded one that really drives the early cash flow on this portfolio acquisition. There's $18 million in deferred payments. So this portfolio was built in a similar manner to the way EMX built its portfolio, by selling projects and getting payments coming in. And we've discussed this before about how you're getting paid to create royalties. So there's stage gate payments, share payments, et cetera. This particular portfolio, we as the owners of it, have an incipient collection of $18 million across that portfolio as various purchase prices come in over time for projects that have already been sold. And if those payments don't come in, we get the project.
Right. Okay. Okay. So Gediktepe is Gediktepe is imminent.
Yes.
Yanni-Pazar and Diablos timing
in development. Mm-hmm.
Meaning
Good
within
assets.
the next 2 years?
I
can't say. Read the paperwork. Where is this paperwork?
Possibly. and I will say this, right? I know it's frustrating. As you are aware, our lawyers are pretty strict with respect to what they expect me to say or not say. There are things that I can probably divulge greater after we've closed the transaction. And then there's certainly much more elaborate discussion that I can have once we've filed royalty 43101s on the material assets, which will be forthcoming.
Right. And how long will the 43101 process take?
So I think that we'll be able to start to disclose much greater information right after close, which I expect to be in about a month.
Okay.
And then forthcoming from that, a few more months after that. And with greater public disclosure, we can go into greater details and talk about forecasting cash flows as we go into 2022, which is going to be a pretty interesting year for EMX, with the Timok project coming online, Balya coming online, Gediktepe coming online, other projects within our portfolio producing nicely. 22 is going to be a very interesting year for EMX.
Yeah, well, I think that's the bit. I mean, look, we could probably I could go through the resource stage stuff, the exploration stuff with you. I'm probably going to get a similar answer. So I won't trouble you now, but I will in about a month's time, hopefully. But I think the market is one, excited that you've gone and made such a bold move. You've gone quite big, which hasn't been the modus operandi over the past couple of decades. You've spent the money. I know you've got a facility with Sprott here to allow you to continue doing what you normally do. But this is a game changer for you. I think the number of people are going to look for is some sort of forward guidance on the revenue for, potentially 2021, actually, if you're saying getting into production soon, but 2022 and 2023, because it's going to be meaningful for you. I mean, significantly meaningful for you.
Significantly, double-digit millions, yes. Mm-hmm. There's no called strikes in investing. And so we don't need to worry about being struck out by guys throwing strikes across the plate. We're able to just stand there at the plate saying, throw another pitch. And we don't have to swing until we see the one we like. So we took our time, and I did have investors that were frustrated over that. They thought that we could go to the Walmart royalty store and buy royalties. We were not willing to do that. So we took our time, waited till we saw the pitch that worked. And as you've heard me say before, I thought that the more likely scenario for us to be able to really land a transformative portfolio would be where the seller wants to participate in the upside by taking equity in EMX, where they see the potential for EMX to be re-rated, and would also like to see the flow of projects that emanate from our generative portfolio. So there's a lot of synergies here. As I said, we're delighted to have SSR as a incipient shareholder and look forward to working with them in the future. And that was, I think, one of the key catalysts that enabled this transaction to work.
I believe that. I think the balance seems better. The balance between the generative component, which has this longer tail to it, which is, where you came from, but the balance feels better now, which is the bit that intrigues me about why I'd like to understand these numbers once the deal's closed, etc. So definitely want to have that conversation with you. And one small concern, okay, which is SSR. They wanted to partake in equity because it's the only way that you could get this deal done, because you spent your cash, hadn't you? Right? Is there going to be an overhang on your stock as a result of SSR perhaps just feeding the market with your stock after the 4-month hold is up?
So they are allowed to do that if they wish. I'm not of the opinion that that's what their intent is at all. And they mentioned that their desire to be an EMX shareholder in their press release, I believe.
They did, but that doesn't stop the behavior, of selling into the market.
They can, right? And it's a free market, and they're willing, or they're welcome to do so if they wish. I don't believe that. I don't believe that's their intent, but I can't speak on their behalf on that subject. I believe that we have other capital partners that's supportive of EMX, that if we needed to raise additional monies for this deal, if we would have, or for future deals, that we have the ability to do that. We've got a good reputation with capital players and that are supportive of EMX now and in the future.
Right. And does that mean that those supportive partners could, if SSR did want to start selling down in blocks, would come and support you?
Hypothetically, I can't guarantee that.
Okay. Right. I think
but you see how our stock trades.
Yeah.
Our volumes have done well on New York Stock Exchange. We have broad support and a good reputation.
Okay. Well, I think the key word out of today's conversation is transformative. You changed the shape and color of the company. I'm intrigued by what's to come next. What is to come next, actually? Go on.
So we're pouring fuel on the fire. That's what we're doing. And just to further elaborate on what you already identified right there, we had a paucity of near-term cash flow, which is something we've been criticized for a long time, with a wealth of optionality and incipient cash flow coming from the portfolio. This acquisition fits like a glove in that it's front-weighted with that 10% NSR at Getty Tepe. So that gives us the powerful cash flow over the next 3 years, whilst the rest of the portfolio matures. So this was the right one for us. It was the right pitch across the center of the plate.